We have all kinds of people who attend this meeting who are doing incredible work. Gordon Fuller joined our meeting last week, and then afterwards, he and I had a great conversation. He's going to be talking about digital inclusion and the needs, technologies, and opportunities for seniors and people with disabilities. So I thought there was some real synergy there. Gordon, if you want to introduce yourself, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Well, howdy. It's a joy to speak to such an august gathering of people so much in the lane that I've been so interested in for now going on 45 years. I grew up in Sedona as a child, family horse ranch. I was a watercolorist, painter, had my first one man art show at the Phoenix Art Museum when I was 6. I was the youngest child they took into Arizona State University in a gifted children's program in the art department, where I learned how to be creative in ways that are quite to this very day unique: to hear with your sense of taste, to smell with your eyes. It was the bohemian era of the 60s, a child of the 60s, and I was encouraged to explore my senses and to question how my human conception of the world around me was delivered and what I might make of that. So that early experience really touched me, and my great artist aspirations continued all the way through. I ended up going to art and design school in Europe and studying to be a commercial artist, animator. And when I came back to the States, it was a teen. I learned I would be becoming blind, which was quite shocking. I think the only thing that came to mind at the moment was a Shirley Temple movie where there was a blind man on a sidewalk selling pencils. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've spent my life to pursue an art career, and now I'll be good for selling pencils on a street corner. So I always like to tell people I was not always a rocket scientist about disability issues myself. We'll just start right there. One in four people in our society have disabilities. In Arizona, that number is undoubtedly higher. I think many of you know this already. And then when we throw in the aging population, we see what a large number of people that is. In the world, we also know that people with disabilities actually have family and friends that are involved with them in the disability challenge. So the number actually quite approaches nearly half the population. That's what Barclays Bank found over in England when they looked at people with disabilities as a market. I've had a dual career. When I learned I was going to go blind, I started thinking about what I could do that might engage other talents that I had. I hadn't really thought about it till that moment. And I was glad I was younger. I said to myself that I notice older people aren't really keen on making changes in their life as they conceived of it. And now that you're young, you have your life ahead of you. And if you're open to it, you might learn something from the experience. At the time, I remember saying, bullshit. And the reason I said that, I was 19. Hey, it was quite depressing to confront blindness. I didn't know what to do about it. But then I met other blind people, and I realized that their rich lives and their accomplishments could guide me, that there was more to life than just staying in one lane and trying to be more engaging. I realized my creativity was undaunted, and I looked for a new media in which my artist creative expression could find flight. And as it happened, computer graphics was in the very early days. And my brother, who was an astrophysicist here at the university, was working with digital telescope instrumentality, designed radio telescopes. And our friends were all technologists. And I found that image manipulation using digital tools could be something that could be done. And because I'd worked in television on and off over the years at school, I realized that computer graphics could be a way of fulfilling the blurry requirements of old time TV. The old 4x3 TVs we used to have, they didn't see so good either. So I realized my career could be extended by using these tools, and I dove in. And I started also with my brother working on head mounted displays that might allow me to use micro cameras, image processing computers to allow my eyesight to be extended using the best available tools. At the same time, here in Tucson, I served as commissioner of arts and culture, and they announced cable television was going to come to our town and giving us 200 channels. I remember thinking, for our arts and culture workers here and our diverse and unique communities that we have, I don't see 200 channels bringing anything but outside storytellers' stories, reflecting values of other places, not necessarily embracing what I loved about Arizona and our cultures and our diverse peoples. So I got busy. I lobbied, I created workshops, I organized the community, and I wrote a position paper, which I'll throw in the chat today just for grids, because it kind of nails, even to this very day, what we've learned about television and how it goes. And in the light of the world that we live in today, it's pretty significant to think of how much we've given away of our unique aspects of our communities. And nowhere further could that be seen than the idea of the internet. When it started, I had been elected to the board of directors of a community owned cable company in Palo Alto, Stanford University. I was given the opportunity to help people look at how to move technology ahead. I ended up designing the US first cable television broadband network in Palo Alto. I designed smart home applications for it. And that led to partnering with NTT of Japan to build the world's first digital twin metaverse using video conferencing tools they developed through an intranet, serving only our community with broadband. And I was also on the advisory board for Pacific Bell at that time. I also was one of the founders of the California Research Education Network. And the reason I got into those positions was because I also in 1977 got trained up in Phoenix to be a 504 specialist. That's the public law associated with any federal monies to be spent, to be used to make inclusive and accessible opportunities for people with disabilities. And learning that was the beginning of my advocacy work for people with disabilities, which now goes on about 50 years. I told myself, whatever I did in life, I realized that it would be an extreme disadvantage to have a disability like blindness in the culture in which, when you're told you're going to go blind, all you can think of is all it'll be good for is selling pencils. It started with my own self, how I responded, and thought about how other people respond, and had my own observations of that and experience right up until I had to start using a white cane all the time as my eyesight diminished. But back in Palo Alto there, I built a virtual reality version of the town in the early days, low polygon 3D modeling. And we used some graphics accelerator cards that were new, like the GPU chips today. We gave people telephone headsets. We gave them my broadband network service to homes and businesses. And we created models of Palo Alto and Stanford and the Baylands. We even included artificial life forms with AI programming, which were butterflies, birds, fish. We even had the trains running on time between Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and Atherton. And we just kind of showcased what you could do where the people could see each other as video avatars, robot consoles rolling about with your face on it using the video cameras we gave to our people. And so it was the first demonstration trial of the technology. The head mounted display systems that I'd been working on had evolved. I had consulted to a number of companies on this. I ended up publishing the International Journal of Virtual Reality, which was an academic journal. And it gave me a broad purview of how artists and creative people were using digital technology to create a new important chapter in human evolution, how we extend ourselves from beyond our limitations using the tools we have available. And so jumping ahead to today, I wanted to say my greatest goal here would be to imbue with you all the thought that, as in my own case, people can be adaptable and flexible. They can find new ways of embracing challenges. And it is the hallmark of our humanity. It is the good thing about us that most of us aren't aware of until it comes into our lives. And it does come into our lives. So many people, every one of us, we know people in our own families often that have disabilities. Quite often, it's our own families that are the first place where we encounter prejudice and have a challenge to overcome. Unlike other minorities, we're kind of isolated even within our own families and communities. When you try to think of how many people in Arizona have a disability, if you ask us to hold up our hands, quite a lot of people are going to say, well, I just have a little trouble walking, or my hearing isn't so good. People don't want to join this short bus. It is truly a social stigma. My own precious brother preferred to die than to be a person that had a disability. He was an astrophysicist. He was known for creating the systems they use today for making large telescope lenses. He invented video over the internet. My brother, he was such a gift, but for him, he didn't want to adapt. He didn't want to be disabled. He could hide in his office and away from people. It was a sad thing. And I have to tell you that it's one of the things I've had to overcome is the realization of just how difficult it can be for some people to overcome the challenge of disability. So now I wanted to jump ahead to the thing I want to think of as the really good news. And that is by building out this infrastructure, we're looking at where every home is connected to broadband. It's an interesting challenge. In the time that I've been alive, I've served on boards and foundations and nonprofits, and the outcomes are the thing that people really want to know. Donors want to know, what are you going to do with this? What's going to happen from it? And what I found throughout now decades of watching the FCC and various programs to extend broadband benefits to rural and isolated people and tribal communities and others. I've worked in this area extensively with people that are the leaders in those areas. We've run into the same problem, which is it's kind of a techie, geeky kind of build it and they will come kind of an idea, which is unfortunate because a lot of people have fear. They don't understand how this might change their community. As I had said, diversity and uniqueness are our gift. It isn't that it's something we want to stamp out and make homogenous everything. Certainly not. And for that reason, embracing the truth of our situation as human beings, there's an oversight that we've made in building and designing the infrastructure we use today. And that is, it's up in the clouds. There's a centralized place where we go. We must have permissions. We have to run through someone else's service. And to me, that's just such an affront, given that right back here on the ground in my community, I have a hell of a time trying to find out which of my neighbors might have a drill. I don't need a drill. I need a hole. And it would be better if I didn't go and buy a $39 drill at Costco or Home Depot or whatever. Instead, it'd be better if I could just get that darn hole and consult with my neighbors. Likewise, the isolation, uh, the way that we sometimes regard others in our community that may be houseless. They don't have homes. They're not going to get connected. And they are definitely on the other side of the digital divide. And they're also my people, people with mental health challenges, people that have sensory, cognitive disconnects, the poverty that people find themselves in when they are considered disabled. There's only a 22% employment rate for people that have disabilities. Social Security estimates 68% of people who could work with a disability don't work. And the reason for that is, of course, the social bias, the stigma. It's very different in other countries. In Japan and Europe, I've been accepted very quickly. When I've mentioned I work on technologies to help people with disabilities, they think that sounds like a really good market. Wow, what a difference. But here we are today as we confront this new reality of this universal service fund being held up, all of this. One of the big concerns I've had, and many have, is this isn't really enough money ever to fulfill the mission that we've taken on here, and that we will need philanthropy. And that's a rather interesting challenge because in our own communities, we have communities, foundations, we have nonprofit grantors that could be given to understand a mission that could really fill in the blanks and make a difference. And from that side of the desk, I'd like to just give my own pitch now for the idea that I'd like to recommend, which is the idea of a commons. It's a digital commons. I see where the future is going. Spatial computing, as you've heard of Apple's device, that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. The truth of things is that noodling around on a little black square in your pocket is a bit of fun, but wouldn't it be better if, as you walk out your door, the world around you, depending on what your interests are and what you want to engage with, is at your disposal when you consider something. You may ask, what is that? Or when was it built? Or what was the history of this place? And you could engage with pleasant things that have been encoded into the spatial fabric around you, things that are cultural events and historical events, things that are informative about public safety. Hey, blind guy, if you're crossing the street here, they have construction on the other side as of March 31st. You might want to consider going to the east side and or update this if it's already completed and stuff like that. A public commons, essentially, not one controlled by gatekeepers up in the cloud, but by each individual having a peer-to-peer encrypted connection to a trusted source server. And that is their community. The idea of serverless distributed networks in our communities, allowing us to put in nodes for information where we can have maps ready to go. Anyone arriving can get this map. They're not being tracked. There's no corporate predator up in the clouds following every move we make and watching and observing what we do, trying to guess at the patterns that they're perceiving. Instead, we can have people engage with trusted sources, things they want to know about. If I'm going to the shop and I'm looking for a fishing knife for my uncle, why wouldn't I want to reveal that to a trusted source as I'm moving in that direction rather than having it, yes, he's leaving the house. Where's he going? So forgive me, I've tried to be as brief as possible and cover a lot of ground. I've considered carefully how technology has a form, fit, and function. And the world we live in today, let's consider it just a bit crude yet. We're not at a place where it's a ubiquitous access to knowledge that manifests itself at our command in the form that we need it in for our best use. And that is the world that I'm aiming for. It's not just about people with disabilities, it's about all of us. We all have our own personal ways that we would like to engage with the community around us. And that's the final thing I want to say. Community. Wow, what a concept. What a wonderful idea. My work is in place-based spatial computing. The idea of how you can make where you are a center of your data sphere. And so as you engage with that, that's where your relationships are. That's where you work. It's where you go to school, where you shop, where your kids are. It's the world that you really want to be in touch with. And you don't need someone in between you and that world. That world is present and available. And when you strip away all the spyware and you strip away the latency that comes from having distance storytellers, it becomes a much more robust, light, simple technology embodiment. And indeed, we could assemble it out of spare parts. But the best part is that people that aren't going to have good use for a broadband connection, 90-year-old yucky grandmas, how are they going to take advantage of a broadband network? Well, quite likely would be with telehealth, telemedicine, telemonitoring, tell a friend, neighborhood connectivity, giving us a better weave of things. When you leave your house and you see a person that appears to be houseless, wouldn't it be great if you had a little heads up display that said, "Oh, that's Eddie. If you see him, please tell him his sister would like to talk to him. They can get a call for him over at the center." Something like this. Wouldn't it be a different world than just wondering, who is that fellow? What's he doing here? Having that connection to community is what I'd like to see us rekindle. I'd like to see education expanded from inside of a classroom in a school out into the world where the students begin to tell us the stories as they learn the skills involved in augmented reality, spatial computing, and how you place information around the environment so that people encounter it. And then the last thing I'd say is environmental sensing and monitoring. The ability to use these tools and technologies as a collective lens on the world that we live in to give us updates and understanding of where problems occur and what can be done could really engage better our volunteerism. And I think that's the final word I'd like to say, engagement. There's so much to be done to engage our citizenry in the betterment of our world.
Gordon, thank you very much.